Tom, when I was a minister, when a commentator would come out with the end of session report cards, I was nervous. And what am I seeing in the Gazette? Tom Mulcair is grading Quebec's political parties.
Exactly.
So, who do you want to start with?
Well, it's interesting because I know what you're talking about, and that was a very influential report card that was always done, but it was on individual ministers by Michel David and Le Devoir. What I did is I took a look at the political parties, where they are, how things have been going. So we started off with the CAQ, and I had to give them a low grade simply because it's been a terrible year for François Legault. Now, I think that by any honest measure, he did quite well in his first mandate, which contained the worst years of the pandemic. Quebec did pretty well, all things considered. And I think that Legault has tried a certain number of things that continue to work well. But the type of year that he's had is unique in the annals of Quebec politics. I don't think, David, I've ever seen a single bad decision turn into what it's turned into for Legault. So the bad decision I'm referring to is his broken promise to build a third link between Quebec City and its South Shore. Yeah. And one thing led to another. Joëlle Boutin, who was the member of the National Assembly for Jean Talon, again, a Quebec City riding, when she stepped down because she was frustrated with Legault, well, she quit the CAQ, but she caused a by-election. And you know what happened next. People in Quebec City were so furious. They banded together. They voted strategically. Look, I've got a bunch of personal friends up there. We lived in Quebec City for years. They all voted for the Parti Québécois, even though not one of them has ever voted PQ in their life, saying the only vehicle that we had that we were sure had a chance of winning was the PQ. We all voted PQ to give a kick in the rear end to François Legault for breaking that promise. So it's just morphed. I mean, his only strategy in this session has been to hide basically from the cameras. And again, he's going to be able to rise up from it. He's halfway through his second majority mandate. Has he got any intention of sticking around beyond that? I honestly doubt it, because he's in his late 60s now. I think he's going to pack it in, but by then. But at the same time, he accomplished something unique in Quebec politics. He's founded a new party. Said, I want to break the mold of the 50-year-old trap that we've been in, separatist versus federalist. He did that, and he won. But now he's dealing with the reality of governing. He's not able to get a deal with the doctors right now. The education system's falling apart. All of the chickens are coming home to roost. So yes, the very low mark that I gave to the CAQ was a reflection of the very bad year that Legault has had.
A C-.
Yes, well deserved.
Moving on to the Liberal Party.
Well, the Liberals are the official opposition, right? So, I mean, they should be doing well. Sometimes they do really pertinent stuff. So, for example, they went after the CAQ. We had several ministers come out and attack a trade union, one of the teachers' unions, for daring to defend people's rights. They were going to be in court, saying that they agreed that Bill 21 went too far and it should be taken down. Bill 21, of course, is the infamous bill that Legault brought in that attacks religious minorities in Quebec. Well, I still can't believe that this actually happened. We had several ministers attack a trade union for defending rights, for defending minority rights, saying they shouldn't be allowed to do that and they shouldn't be allowed to use the courts. Hey, this is the backbone of a democracy, is a court system where everybody's treated the same. That's called the rule of law. And you're going to attack people for using the court. So that, I think, was one of the good things that the Liberals did, was to go after that. But overall, I mean, they're moribund. They're the Rodney Dangerfield of Quebec politics. They can't get no respect, and until they get a real leader. I mean, look, we had Tanguay's not a slouch. He does good work sometimes, but over the weekend, what did he do? He goes in front of the microphones and he says, look, he can prove that Legault is the worst Quebec premier in history. Really? Can we have the list of 10 and know who the next 3 or 4 are? Just on that, just show us your list. Or is this just a blind, obviously partisan personal attack against Legault? You know what? Something like that that's so exaggerated, it has the opposite effect. People are just saying, you have no credibility to make that. So they get a well-deserved D for dud. And that until the Liberals get themselves a new leader. By the way, I'm predicting safely that once the Liberals go through the race, they get the spotlights on them, they get some interesting ideas and some good people into that race, and one of them wins, they got a real chance of winning the next election. Because it's going to go back to a fight. I think the CAQ is toast. I think it's going to go back to a fight between the PQ and the Liberals, and the Liberals will win. So we'll see.
Wow. Yeah. Interesting call there. Moving on to Quebec Solidaire, I'm surprised. I think you were generous here with Quebec Solidaire, but go ahead.
Well, they got a B plus. I mean, you pay your fees and you get your Bs. So I think one of the reasons that I gave them a good mark is that Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois, and maybe it's personal empathy for somebody trying to take an ideologically driven party and turn it into, and modernize it and turn it into a contender.
Do you know something about that, Tom?
Something I know a little bit about, and you have to drag them kicking and screaming as they say, you're giving up on all our principles. But Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois won that big bet over the weekend, and he did it skillfully, and he showed a good skill set. And he's building that party into something that they're never going to form government, not in the next while anyway, but they could easily become the official opposition. And I think that, it'll be thanks to him and his guts and his saying, look, if I'm going to spend my life doing politics, I'm going to do it in a way where I actually have a chance of shaping the course of events. You can only do that if you're the leader of the opposition or if you're the head of the government. And I think that in both cases, Quebec Solidaire was going to be way back in the pack. He fought hard to get that 10th seat. They now have official party status, and he wants to build on it. He should be given a chance and see whether he can pull it off in the next election.
All right. Now let's go to the Parti Québécois. They're slipping, aren't they?
They are slipping because they're slippery. And by the way, I've had lots of contact with Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon. I really like the guy on a personal level. He's smart. He's easy to deal with. But the PQ is trying so much to be all things at the same time. So they'll try to convince you that they're somehow progressive, but they're anything but. They're a real right-wing party, old school, nationalist, on gender issues, which are sort of identifying issues. If you want to bring a younger audience on, you have to show that you get this stuff. And of course, Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon said something on the whole gender file that was so out of sync with any image that he tries to project. Then he went, he just decided to do a stunt. He goes near where there was a fight, several young people, a couple of people died in a knife fight recently. He showed up giving his law and order spiel as if this was, a Republican in the late 1960s in the United States. And so he's going to have to decide whether the PQ under him, if he's going to be channeling René Lévesque or he's going to be becoming Pierre Poilievre light. And so far, there's no definition to that party, even though, by the way, I think that they outperform all of the opposition parties in the House. There's only 4 of them, and that is something. That's why he gets a B. But he gets unlike Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois in Quebec Solidaire, he gets a B minus, not a B plus.
And finally, closing it out, Éric Duhem and the Conservatives.
Wow. So Éric Duhem, he's still got nobody in the House, so he's irrelevant politically. It's not a serious party. He's a one-man show without a show because he can't even get into the National Assembly to hold press conferences. Although with the grumbling that we're starting to hear amongst the backbenchers who are hoping that it would be their turn at that, because now that they're halfway through their second mandate, a lot of the very, very talented people, and believe me, there are talented people in the caucus of François Legault who have just for all sorts of reasons been held back. Legault doesn't want to reshuffle his cabinet. He just wants to try to keep his head down. He doesn't need more by-elections, but he's going to probably wind up with somebody crossing the floor and going and becoming the new Claire Sanson. We remember that she was the person in the CAQ who became the official member of the Conservative Party in the National Assembly. And what that gives is the key to the press room. So you can all of a sudden get in and have press conferences in the National Assembly. I think that by the time the session starts in September, we're going to have somebody who will cross the floor and go help Duhem. If they don't get that person, and it's not a guarantee, but if they don't get that person, then Duhem, I think, is probably going to go and run with Poilievre. There's a lot of rumors to that effect, and I think that it's true. And if he does go and run for Poilievre, in the next election, the Conservatives are back to the 1%, 2% range that they've always been in historically.
What if, very quickly, and finishing on this, Tom, what if we have a Poilievre government in Ottawa in 2025? Do you think that could help the fortunes of Éric Duhem and the Conservative Party of Quebec at all?
No, I don't think so, because he has no team. He doesn't have, anybody to organize for him. He's got nobody to put in front of the cameras. He doesn't have he had a couple of decent candidates last time, but really not enough. He couldn't put together any team that would plausibly look like they could ever run. The government of Quebec's a pretty big show. We're going to be heading to 10 million population. It's not small potatoes, and it's got to be run properly, and it's a lot more complicated than it looks. It's easy to be, he had his radio show in Quebec City, and he would just rail against everything. That's one thing. But it's quite another to actually run a place like that. No, it would be an absolute disaster if Duhem were to ever become the leader of the government. Can he run for Poilievre successfully? I think he could. I think he could win a seat for Poilievre, sure. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Poilievre put him in cabinet. Maybe once he had a little bit of experience, he'd know that it's a little bit more complicated than anything he's learned so far.
Fascinating stuff. The report card is on the Gazette website. Tom, always a pleasure.
Great to talk to you, David. All the best.
All the best.